Hey y'all, we're back. Last time we talked about Friendship is Magic Part 1. Well, most of it. This time we'll be talking about Friendship is Magic Part 1's finale, as well as Friendship is Magic Part 2. If you didn't catch the last video, you probably might want to go check out the other one, because otherwise this isn't going to make a whole hell lot of sense. And no, it's not clickbait just because the first part of this episode involves Friendship is Magic Part 1. Don't even go there. I know you're going there. Don't do it. Right then. Let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Doop-doop-doo. So I just gotta wait for that. So, last time I was talking about Pinky. Well, I don't have much more to add on Pinky, except for this. I do think this scene is pretty funny, where Twilight mistakes alcohol, or what I assume is meant to be alcohol, or pina colada juice or whatever, or coconut juice or something, for hot sauce. Now, it seems at first here that Twilight is, reacting badly to the idea of friends, which isn't quite the case. And in fact, this happens a lot through these first two episodes. They kind of bait and switch you with the idea that she's reacting to friends, and then it happens to be some third-party other thing that she's actually reacting to. I think that's pretty clever on their part. In this scene, she does the Rapidash, but it's probably not intentional, because her color doesn't entirely turn white.
She's so happy she's crying. Hot sauce. Yeah, looks good. Hey, Twilight.
So here we have Spike wearing a lampshade hanging on his head, which is a universal sort of trope depicting hardcore debauchery. Now, I'm going to go to TV tropes quickly for a better way of putting it. This used to be a trope, but now it's pretty much a parody of a trope, which is to say, whenever you see it, it's a lampshade hanging on lampshade wearing, which isn't directly from TV tropes, in case you're wondering, but that's just my observation.
Wanna play? No! All the parties in this town are crazy! Do you know what time it is? It's the eve of the summer sun celebration. Everybody has to stay up, or they'll miss the princess raise the sun. You really should lighten up, Twilight. It's a party! You're I thought I'd have time to learn more about the elements of harmony. But, silly me, all this ridiculous friend-making has kept me from it. Legend has it that the longest day of 1,000 years, the stars will aid your escape, and she will bring about everlasting night. I hope the princess was right. I hope it really is just an old ponytail. Come on, Twilight! It's time.
The princess didn't tell you it was an old ponytail. Spike did. Also, Twilight comically misses the stars actually moving.
But
First introduction of Mayor in a few seconds here.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Mayor of Ponyville, it is my great pleasure to announce the beginning.
To this day, I have to wonder, was her name Mayor before she became mayor?
In just a few moments,
How does that work?
our town will witness the magic of the sunrise and celebrate this.
Also, her name literally means mayor lady.
And now, it is my great honor to
Just saying.
introduce to you the ruler of our land, the very pony who gives us the sun and the moon each and every day, the good, the wise, the bringer of harmony to all of Equestria. Ready? Princess Celestia! Huh? This can't be good. Remain calm, every pony. There must be a reasonable explanation. She's gone. Ooh, she's
Oddly enough, Pinky's the first to notice.
Nightmare Moon. Oh, my beloved subjects. It's been so long since I've seen your precious little sunlight face.
Interestingly, we have the three CMC huddling together scared, even though they don't actually know each other yet. This was actually an error on the part of one of the background fillers, where he, I believe in an interview or on Twitter, stated that he just picked some random fillies to put together, and it just happened to be the CMC.
Do with our princess. Hold on, Nellie. Why? Am I not royal enough for you? Don't you know who I am? What is it? Pokemon. How about Queenie? No, Black Scooby.
It makes very little sense that nobody knows who she is, considering they have an entire holiday based around it that we get to see in Season 2. But that's what happens when you have a long-running series full of retcons.
Does my craft no longer count now that I have been imprisoned for 1,000 years? Did you not recall the legend? Did you not see the signs? I did, and I know who you are. You're the Mare in the Moon.
How exactly does Nightmare Moon know that she became a legend? Did she intend for that to happen? Did she tell Celestia, you better make me a legend, before she got banished? She didn't, we already know this, but... nitpicks are nitpicks.
Nightmare Moon. Well. Some pony remembers me. Then you also know why I'm here. You're here to... Remember this day, little ponies, for it was your last. From this moment forth, the night will last forever.
And then we get our first to be continued screen. I believe when it originally aired, the to be continued screen actually meant something, but in later seasons, it didn't mean shit, because you would normally just see the episode right after. A little strange, to say the least, but hey, who's counting strange things besides me? Let's get right on into part 2, which is what you came for.
Just an old pony's tale. She will bring about nighttime eternal. It's imperative that the prince... Seize her! Only she knows where the princess is! Stand back, you fools!
I find it interesting that Mayor has enough clout with the Royal Guard to tell them to seize Nightmare Moon. Maybe they were just doing it because they knew, like, it's her job. It's their job anyway.
Come back here! Nighttime? Forever? Where's she going? We gotta stop Nightmare! You've been up all night, Spike.
So Spike falls asleep in the most dire hour. How sad. Little guy really does get the shaft, even in these early episodes.
Baby dragon, after all. Elements. Ugh! How can I stop Nightmare Moon without the elements of harmony? And just what are the elements of harmony? And how did you know about Nightmare Moon, huh? Are you a spy? No! Simmer down, Sally. She ain't no spy.
Well, she could be a spy. You don't know that. She did introduce herself as the princess's protege, so I mean, you have to assume that she would know.
She sure knows what's going on, don't you, Twilight?
What's interesting here is that everybody seems really stern, and the way they animated them, most of them, including Fluttershy, look almost angry, mistrustful, except for Pinkie and oddly Rarity, who both look more so disappointed. I guess Pinkie wouldn't want her new friend to be evil, and Rarity might not want to miss out on the Canterlot business, but other than that, I'm not quite sure why everybody outside of Rainbow Dash is acting this way.
I read all about the prediction of Nightmare Moon. Some mysterious objects called the elements of harmony are the only things that can stop her. But I don't know what they are, where to find them. I don't even know what they do. The elements of harmony. A reference guide. How did you find that? It was under E.
Twilight Sparkle seems very bothered that the fact that she is a book horse who likes organizing books, she wasn't able to find the elements of harmony in an alphabetical system. This joke never actually hit me when I first watched the episode. I was only 13 at the time, but even now it kind of falls flat unless you know more about Twilight's character. So it's kind of like a brick joke, or a fridge joke, for that matter.
There are 6 elements of harmony, but only 5 are known. Kindness, laughter, generosity, honesty, and loyalty.
Why is the 6th element not known? Considering the elements were based on the pillars of Equestria, which we find out later as a retcon, it's kind of weird that they don't know the 6th. Again, it seems like plot contrivance, but that's only because we have future meta knowledge. Otherwise, it kind of just works for the whole setup that we're going to get with Twilight's arc.
6 is a complete mystery. It is said the last known location of the 5 elements was in the ancient castle of the Royal Pony Sisters. It is located in what is now the Evergreen Forest.
The ancient castle of the Royal Pony Sisters, also known as the Castle of the Two Sisters, would only later come into importance 3 whole seasons later. Almost 4 whole seasons later, actually. Which is kind of sad, but it's interesting that they went back to it at all. It could have just served as a one-time thing, and nobody would have been the wiser.
Not so fast. Look, I appreciate the offering, but I'd really rather do this on my own. No can do, Sugar Cube. We sure ain't letting any friend of ours go into that creepy place alone. We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy.
For once, Twilight actually acts negatively towards the idea of being called a friend, with it actually being because she's being called a friend. And I guess I understand, because from the viewer's perspective, you don't really make friends in the way these ponies have made friends with her. And as an introvert myself, I think I can weigh in on the idea that you're not really, when you're an introvert, you're not really trusting or open as more extroverted people are. So the idea that you can just become friends that easily, especially when you're so used to seclusion, can come as off as, well, malevolent or almost suspicious. I can't speak on all introverts, but I can only speak for myself. And I've had that feeling in the past where I wasn't sure about people, and then they turned out to be my great friends, but in other cases I've ran into people, and they turned out to be just as jerkish as I imagined them to be. So I can understand Twilight's dilemma here.
Especially if there's candy apples in there. What? Those things are good. So, none of you have been in here before? Heavens no. Just look at it. It's dreadful. And it ain't natural. Folks say it don't work the same as equestrian. What's that supposed to mean? No, pony knows.
So, hold on. Folks say it ain't natural, and it doesn't work like Equestria, but they don't know how it doesn't work like Equestria? This is, again, another thing that gets retconned, where they point out that the reason it doesn't work like Equestria is because, well, the sky, the clouds, and weather affects itself, the seasons are affected by itself, and shit grows without pony intervention, which ironically is just Earth when you think about it. So, Pony's version of unnatural is just Earth.
You know why? Rainbow quit it. 'Cause every pony who's ever come in has never come out. Fluttershy, quick! Oh my goodness, oh my goodness! Hold on, I'm a-coming. Applejack, what do I do?
Okay, so I've been waiting for this part. I'm gonna have to split my thoughts into two parts because if you haven't seen the episode before, it's not really gonna make sense. Though, if you haven't seen the episode before, I don't know what you're watching. So, you know what? Never mind. I'm actually gonna go into this. We are going to see how each pony represents their element and acts as the pillar to their element throughout this part of the episode. First part, we're introduced to them. This part, we're introduced to how they are connected to the elements. But, to be completely honest, among other things wrong with the elements chosen, honesty doesn't really make a lot of sense in the context of this show. They try to make it a virtue, but they miss out on the fact that sometimes, in order for friendship to work, a little dishonesty is required. And that would be bad enough, and I could look past that. But, as we're about to see here, this is probably the worst way they could have represented honesty in, like I could think of 100 better examples on how to show honesty than what they're about to do here.
Let go. Are you crazy? No, I ain't. I promise you'll be safe. That's not true. Now listen here. What I'm saying to you is the honest truth. Let go, and you'll be safe.
And she's dead! My Little Pony. Okay, I'm just kidding. So, Applejack looks up, cluing us into her knowing something we don't, and she tells Twilight to let go. But why this doesn't work, if it's not immediately obvious, is that, yes, Twilight's life is in danger, and yes, Applejack is being honest about it, but at the same time, she's about to fall off a cliff. this pony that has shown every time she's met them that she's determined to stick with Twilight and be her friend, is now telling her to let go and drop off a cliff. So there's no real reason for Twilight to doubt Applejack, besides fear and common sense. Everything else we get to see signifies the elements much better. We get to see how Fluttershy is kind even to a monster. We get to see how Rainbow's loyal even when offered her dream. But what we don't get, and what is perhaps what's the word I'm looking for here? A misfit for this kind of message is that the honesty here isn't warranted. She doesn't need to be honest here. Everyone else doesn't need to be their thing either, but in this case, it's, so to speak, wow. Really finding trouble articulating my words, but basically, there are better ways for her to show honesty. Like, she could have, for example, how do I put this? They could have had... What do you want? Oh my god. Anyway, I believe that it could have been shown differently. You could have had Nightmare Moon, perhaps, give Applejack false information, and she could have, at the expenditure of promising her some material wealth of some kind, and you could have had Applejack decline to give the ponies the false information and tell the truth. There's tons of ways you could have shown that Applejack is honest without risking the life of somebody in a situation that you already know she's not trying to get Twilight killed, so of course she's going to be honest about it. She's not going to lie. There's no real, I guess, outside force working against AJ to show that she truly defines the element she's showing. I just think that's a little silly, but that's me.
Sorry, girls. I'm not used to holding anything more than a bunny.
Interestingly, this is the only time, aside from the Manticore, that Nightmare Moon actually tries to kill the protagonists. She gets progressively more goofy as time goes on. Perhaps more desperate? I don't know what the intention was. It's not very clear, which is an unfortunate downside to these early episodes.
And what Pinky and Birdie were saying? Whoosh! Me and Fluttershy looked to look around and wham! Got you right in the nick of time. Yes, Rainbow, I was there. And I'm very grateful. But we got a Manticore!
The inflection of different mythologies within the equestrian universe was one that was a decision of Lorne Faust, and a very smart decision, I think. It fleshes out the world in a way that makes it more than just human land with ponies. Equestria became more unique by its inclusion of mythical creatures and its lack thereof of traditional creatures in the traditional sense. Almost every creature in existence is domesticated except the mythical ones, which are either intelligent or wild rather than domesticated. This is an interesting inclusion, and we see it as early as this episode, and we get to see it throughout Season 1 and 2 to its fullest potential. We see it less often later on, but we also see more original takes on classic mythos rather than just the traditional Manticore, which is what's being displayed here.
Gotta get past him. Chase that, you ruffian! My hair!
So, here we see the two sides of Rarity up close and personal. She's not afraid to attack a wild animal that's attacking her friends straight up and roundhouse kick it in the face. But at the same time, she retreats as soon as the Manticore ruins her hair. The duality of Rarity is pretty simple. She's a girly girl, but she's also capable of kicking ass. Something that made me actually like Rarity in earlier seasons. More horse noises. Hasbro would not suggest approaching a wild animal and saying, "Shh, it's okay." Unlike in Far Cry Primal, you do not have magical powers that allow you to tame wild animals. You are not Fluttershy, you will never be Fluttershy. So, seriously, don't do this at home, kids.
Little? This might hurt just a second. Fluttershy! Oh, you're just a little baby kitty, aren't you? Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Here we get to see Fluttershy's affinity for animals as opposed to her affinity with other ponies. Although it's kind of weird that they chose to have a creature as big as a Manticore, especially since it's later confirmed she's afraid of dragons, although she's interested in a baby dragon because he's smaller. By that logic, wouldn't she also be terrified of a Manticore? Who knows? Anyway, this is a good shot of showing kindness, I suppose. I don't have much to say about that.
I did it. Sometimes we all just need to be shown a little kindness.
I tried to take it off and it didn't turn out so well.
Yeah, I would.
And it's revealed that the thorn was actually Nightmare Moon.
My eyes need a rest from all this icky muck. That ancient ruin could be right.
So an interesting point of note is that in these scenes, Pinkie Pie isn't seen. I don't think she even actually showed up in the scene with the Manticore either, besides wincing a little bit. She didn't get any speaking lines, and that's all leading up to this part.
Oh wait, I think I stepped in something. It's just mud.
And now we have 6 grown mares, which are probably like 20, if we're Lauren Faust is to be believed. That's their canon ages. They're in their 20s. All terrified of trees that look like monsters. Now, to be fair, from their perspective, they probably look a lot more realistic to their perceptions, and also, I don't think I've ever seen a tree in real life that resembled a man-eating monster, and I also don't live in a universe where man-eating trees could exist, so maybe I'm being too harsh, but it's a little silly. This whole scene's a little silly. Oddly enough, we had a lot more obvious commercial breaks within the first 2 seasons. Later on, they became less noticeable as time went on. But these first 2 episodes in particular have them in spades.
What are you doing? Run! Oh, girl, don't you see? When I was a little filly and the sun was going down. Tell me she's not. Darkness and the shadows, they would always make me frown. She is. I'd hide under my pillow from what I thought I saw. But Grandpa said that wasn't the way to deal with fears at all. So what is? She said, Pinky, you gotta stand up tall. Learn to face your fears. You'll see that they get hurt. You just laugh to make them disappear. Ha, ha, ha.
So this is our first song of the entire series, and an interesting one to kick it off on. Some might find it a little too cheery and a little cheesy, to be blunt, but it's also really uncomfortably catchy in the way that it gets stuck in your head forever, and you're still singing it years later, and people are making remixes of it. Seriously, if you were part of the fandom, you'd know that happened, and it still happens. People are still making remixes of this song, all thanks to the wonderful work of Daniel Ingram, of course, who, if you did not know, is the one who wrote most of the season's songs, all the way up to, I believe, the movie, which released not too long ago, maybe a year or 2. Or maybe it was sooner than that. I think less than a year, actually, now that I think about it. But, yeah. Daniel is a master of making catchy songs, even out of the silliest of lyrics. So, gotta give kudos to him and credit where it's due. Although, since I ratted on Applejack, I'm gonna rat on Pinky here, too. While she is indeed showing the 6 how to laugh away scary faces and shadows that they see in the night to make them disappear, so to speak, it's not really... How do I put this? It's not really explained how she's making them disappear, because if these are illusions brought on by Nightmare Moon, then wouldn't they be magical in nature and not actually disappear just because you laughed at them? Or are the 6 just literally so terrified right now that they're seeing things, in which case I guess it would make sense that they're disappearing from them laughing at them. Either way, with how complicated the whole element of laughter is in this series, it's much like Pinkie Pie, the odd one out, the oddball of the group. The virtue that doesn't quite make any sense and never really will. Some people have taken to calling it the element of morality. Not morality in the sense of, you know, what is good and what is bad, but more so morale, as in keeping up your spirits. Being there to lend a hand. Cheering you up when you're feeling down. Which makes a lot more sense. But I guess if you were going to simplify it for children, laughter works. Kind of. I don't know, I've talked to other 6-year-olds, they've told me that they found the element of laughter to be a little weird, considering all the other ones, but I'm not here to rag on this, I'm just here to give my 2 cents on this old episode and how it holds up. when you laugh so hard, you just start laughing at absolutely nothing.
How are we gonna cross this?
What a world! What a world!
Excuse me.
Ah, Stephen Magnet. Now, while I do not know the exact origins of when exactly it happened, the name Stephen Magnet was actually chosen not by Hasbro and not technically by the fans, but rather by Google's autocomplete caption system. When uploaded to YouTube, this episode's autocomplete caption had the name Stephen Magnet appear. I don't know exactly when. I think it was before he actually said anything. And it kind of just appeared as if it was like a title card for the character. And fans went wild with that idea. The name was later canonized in the episode 100 of the show, Slice of Life.
Me, sir. Why are you crying?
Well, I don't know. I was just sitting here, minding my own business.
But since I am talking about how this show holds up today, I gotta address the elephant in the room. The dude sounds... Well, if you want me to be completely honest with you. Hello, doggo. My doggo has come to join the party. If you want me to be completely honest with you, he sounds, to me, like a feminine male. Maybe like a model or some sort of fashion designer, as they tend to have that weird accent going on. But if you want me to be blunt and use the term most people I think would probably use, he sounds stereotypically gay, which isn't exactly bad, so to speak. I mean, I am an LGBTQ advocate, ally, and I do exist. I wouldn't say it's bad, really, but it is kind of... Go inside. Oh, I didn't mean it might be considered politically incorrect to some, and while I don't really buy into all the SJW stuff, I also don't buy into the camp that all social justice is wrong, or that stereotypes should be played for laughs. But in this case, Stephen is never once really referred to as being gay. The closest we ever get to him being portrayed as gay in the show is the fact that he has a best friend in Cranky Doodle Donkey later in the show, where they went on a lot of adventures. But Cranky is straight, so really, I think we can conclude without any shadow of a doubt that either they're both not gay, or he's not gay, or he just has a feminine voice, which some people tend to do. Just because a lot of gay people tend to have the feminine voice does not mean they are. And we're not even going to bring in the whole trans aspect, because this is a show for kids. They literally were not doing that. While I think some people might be offended by the voice now, I think that being offended by that is kind of unfounded. And while I normally kind of defend people being offended about certain stereotypes, this is one that I think I can let slide. And I advise you to, too.
When this jagged cloud of purple smoke just whisked past me and tore half of my beloved mustache clean off, and now I look simply horrid. Oh.
Keep it, boy. That's what all the fuss is about? Why, of course it is. How can you be so insensitive?
Oh, just look at him.
Such lovely luminescent scales.
I know.
Expertly
So, this is parodied a lot, where Rarity literally just murders the guy. And that's pretty silly, but in all seriousness, this scene is kind of silly either way, because why would she cut off her own tail and give it to him? Purple, and if he just has one side of his mustache be purple and the other orange, that doesn't fix the problem. He still looks weird. I guess the idea is she's giving something of her own without being prompted, which is generosity, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't fix the problem that's already been created. I mean, at least he's happy, so we can't really complain, but still, a little bit weird.
Ow! What did you do that for?
Actually, why wouldn't she just cut off the other side of his mustache? You know, and then make it look like it's intentional.
Mary, what are you...
My mustache! How wonderful!
You smash. Oh, Rip.
I mean, does he?
Rarity, your beautiful tail. Oh, it's fine, my dear. Short tails are in this season. Besides, it will grow back. So with the mustache.
Rainbow's got a fair point.
We can cross now. Let's go.
Allow me.
Here it is. The ruin that holds the elements of harmony. We
How do you know? Did you see a picture of it?
made it. Twilight, wait for us. We're almost there.
And she's dead! Okay, I'll stop with that joke.
What's with you and falling off cliffs?
Technically, she didn't fall the first time. She let go because Applejack told her to. Anti-choke chicken.
Now what? Duh.
We fly. We don't all have wings, Rainbow.
Oh yeah.
Wow, they sure are lucky that that bridge is completely intact but only snapped on one end.
Who's there?
Also, she doesn't really tie the one end up, so how the heck is it just sitting there?
I ain't scared of you. Show yourself. We've been eagerly awaiting the arrival of the best flyer in Equestria. Who? Why, you, of course. Really? I mean, oh yeah, me. Hey, you wouldn't mind telling the Wonderbolts that, would ya? 'Cause I've been trying to get into that group for like ever. No, Rainbow Dash. We want you to join us, the Shadowbolts. We're the greatest aerial team in the Everfree Forest. Soon we will be the greatest in all Equestria.
Now, while I would say she has a point in not giving up her dream, we have to question one little bit of this, logically speaking, because this is a children's show, and when children's shows, we always have to question their logic. Rainbow has never been in the Everfree Forest. Nobody has ever been in the Everfree Forest. So these Shadowbolts are the greatest aerial team in the Everfree Forest. Doesn't really make them all that good, considering nobody's heard of them, and nobody else is in the Everfree Forest, so they kind of win the title of best team in the Everfree Forest by default. But that's just me nitpicking.
We need a captain. The most magnificent. Yep. Swiftest. Yes. Bravest flyer in all the land. Yes. It's all true. We need you.
That's just creepy.
Woohoo! Sign me up. Just let me tie this bridge real quick, and then we have a deal. No! It's them or us. Rainbow! What's taking so long? Oh no. Rainbow!
What's it gonna be?
Thank you for the offer, Annie. But I'm afraid I have to say no.
So what's stopping them from literally just destroying the bridge right now? Oh yeah, it's because Nightmare Moon is an incompetent villain.
Good job, Rainbow. See?
It's of my thoughts that once Luna got corrupted, her intelligence kind of went out the window.
I'd never leave my friends hanging. Come on, Twilight. Isn't this what you've been waiting for? The elements of harmony. We found them.
At first I thought they were spheres based on the way they picked them up, but turns out they're actually weirdly donut-shaped, but with a hole in the middle.
Where's the 6?
But then in another scene, they're all spherical. It's really weird how they change. I think it's just the lighting.
The book said, when the 5 are present, a spark will cause the 6th element to be revealed. What in the hay is that supposed to mean? I'm not sure, but I have an idea. Stand back. I don't know what will happen. Come on now, y'all. She needs to concentrate.
Yes, let's all just leave her alone in the place that Nightmare Moon was headed. Maybe they didn't notice that she was headed this way. Either way, leaving her alone is pretty silly. That lighting effect, though. We never actually get lighting even close to that again until, like, Season 3.
You're kidding. You're kidding, right?
Leroy Jenkins! Magical chicken, and you just got beat. So, we notice here that Twilight just did a long-distance teleport, and it took a toll on her. That's the basis of many of my headcanons, but more specifically, we'll notice that as the series goes on, scenes like that are less and less. Either she's developing as a character, or, you know, they just didn't, you know, have her react to her magic usage. Either way, it's an interesting little thing to point out.
One spark. Come on. No, no. But where's the 6th element?
Kabalooey.
You little fool! Thinking you could defeat me?
Interestingly, she says "you little fool" here, but the subtitles on Netflix say "fool." Considering that they call fools fools later in the series, I think this is Netflix's fault.
Now, you will never see your princess or your son. The night will last forever!
Well, the night will last forever, but then what? I mean, a pretty one-dimensional villain, all things considered. And then she orgasmed. Just kidding. No, she had the spark.
You think you can destroy the elements of harmony just like that? Well, you're wrong, because the spirits of the elements of harmony are right here! What? Applejack, who reassured me when I was in doubt, represents the spirit of honesty.
Wouldn't she represent the element of reassurance?
Fluttershy, who tamed the Manticore with her compassion,
Wouldn't she represent compassion?
Who banished fear by giggling in the face of danger, represents the spirit of laughter.
Why not giggling, though?
Charity, who calmed a sorrowful serpent with a meaningful gift, represents the spirit of generosity.
Well, that one's
And
fine.
Rainbow Dash, who could not abandon her friends for her own heart's desire, represents the spirit of loyalty. The spirits of these 5 ponies got us through every challenge you threw at us. You still don't have the 6th element. The spark didn't work. But it did. A different kind of spark. I felt it the very moment I realized how happy I was to hear you, to see you, how much I cared about you. The spark ignited inside me when I realized that you all are my friends.
Magical girl MacGuffin acquired. In all seriousness, this whole scene is pretty cool, to say the least. It's got that anime flair about it. It's got that kind of thing you didn't really see in other little girls' shows and children's shows at the time. A real attention to detail, setting things up and then paying them off with a scene like this.
You see, Nightmare Moon, when those elements are ignited by the spark that resides in the heart of us all, it creates the 6th element, the element of magic.
How do you know it's called magic? Just another nitpick I have, I guess. Anyway, she gets a crown, which is like super foreshadowy. Chase the rainbow! Obligatory jokes, obligatory.
My head. Every pony okay? Oh, thank goodness. Why, Rarity, it's so lovely. I know. I'll never part with it again. No, your necklace. It looks just like your cutie one. So is yours. Look at mine! Look at mine! Oh, yeah. Gee, Twilight. I thought you were just spouting a lot of hooey. But I reckon we really do represent the elements of friendship.
The elements of friendship. They're called the elements of harmony. Get it right. She literally just said that whole speech. Call a bunch of hooey. Just standing there while magical shit is happening all around you. You assume that she's just spouting bull crap and making a fancy light show. And then you can't even get the freaking element title right. Applejack Worst Pony. I'm kidding. Applejack's pretty good.
Indeed you do.
And then finally, Celestia shows up. And appears to transport out of the moon? So did Nightmare Moon trap her inside the sun? Guess that would be her just desserts.
Princess Celestia!
Twilight Sparkle, my faithful student. I knew you could do it.
You told me it was all an old ponytail.
I told you that you needed to make some friends. Nothing more.
Actually, you told her specifically that she should stop reading musty old books. Go do a different job for you that's completely unrelated, and make some friends. Nice try, episode. People above the age of 8 can pay attention to an entire 40-minute adventure and keep track of the details.
I saw the signs of Nightmare Moon's return, and I knew it was you who had the magic inside to defeat her. But you could not unleash it until you let true friendship into your heart. Now, if only another will as well. Princess Luna. It has been 1,000 years since I have seen you like this.
Well, you've probably seen her like this a lot longer than 1,000 years, considering this is her filly form.
Time to put our differences behind us. We're meant to rule together, little sister.
You don't have differences, you just... This scene really doesn't hold up, is what I'm getting at.
Will you accept my friendship?
Whoa!
well, as much as I don't like the way Celestia acts in this episode, she does have tears going on, so you know it's a genuine mutual kinship going on. So to all those people that kept acting like Celestia was a heartless troll and a tyrant with their memes and stuff, I urge you to take a second watch of these episodes.
Hey, you know what this calls for? A party!
Why so glum, my faithful student? Are you not happy that your quest is complete and you can return to your studies in Canterlot?
That's just it. Just when I learn how wonderful it is to have friends, I have to leave them.
But you had friends before that. You should probably go rekindle your old friendships, not just stick with your new ones.
Spike, take a note, please. I, Princess Celestia, hereby decree that the unicorn Twilight Sparkle shall take on a new mission for Equestria. She must continue to study the magic of friendship. She must report to me her findings from her new home in Ponyville.
Group hug.
Thank you, Princess Celestia. I'll study harder than ever before. Isn't this exciting? Are you excited? Because I'm excited. I've never been so excited. Well, except for the time I went, but I mean...
And there's the first scene of Pinkie Pie literally breaking the fourth wall, something that would become more common as the series went on. Anyway, that's the first two parts of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and how do they hold up? Well, I'd say pretty damn good. Some things are just timeless, and when it comes to this show, even though it has a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of retcons that happened later, going into it new, or even as a returning person, I don't think the retcons and nitpicks I made would really detract from the regular viewer's audience. I don't think it would detract from my viewing pleasure. I still think it's a good show, especially in an age when we had stuff like Fanboy and Chum Chum, and don't even get me started on that. The writing was clear, clever, to the point. It didn't pander to the audience at any point. It kind of works more as a TV show for, I'd say, 10-year-olds than it does strictly 6-year-olds, because it uses words, bigger words, stuff that you'd be learning in elementary school, and really it just all comes together to make a story that wouldn't be out of place in, say, a novel as opposed to a picture book. So, what can I say? It still holds up. It's a great episode, and I hope you enjoyed going through these episodes again with me and seeing just how far we've come and how far we have yet to go. I'm not done with this series of retrospectives. I'll be doing more as time goes on, but you're going to have to give me time to make them, because I like to put a little bit more effort. I know it seems like that whole time I was struggling to find my words and just sort of saying and huh and and I know a lot of YouTubers tend to just cut that stuff out, but I think the style of why I do it